What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have an album review for you. So one of the ones I definitely had on my radar for the week of the 20th of May was the newest offering from Septicflesh, Modern Primitives. This comes out on, again, the 20th of May on Nuclear Blast Records. This band formed in Athens, Greece in 1990. This is their 11th studio album overall, and this band is, I would say, probably one of the big pioneers in terms of symphonic / atmospheric death metal. These guys have been making very lavish, just epically evil death metal for years now, and I'm talking absolutely drenched in atmosphere, but not the creepy atmosphere you hear in the background go, ooh, what was that noise? This is atmosphere that literally kicks down the fucking door, armed with violins and fucking horn sections and choirs, and they're here to fuck you up. They're also here to take you to the opera, apparently. Now, I don't go to the opera. I am uncultured swine, but I think I'm just cultured enough to actually listen to Septicflesh. I've been listening to them for years, so whether or not I'm cultured or not, I'm still gonna listen to them because I really like this band. In terms of like symphonic bands, which is kind of dicey with me, this band really knows how to do it right, and one of the key things in that is the fact that they use real symphonies. It's not keyboards trying to imitate symphonies. It's actual musicians in there with string sections and horns and choirs. They actually bring all this stuff together to make these grandiose, epic albums, and once again, they have definitely done that. For those of you not familiar with Septicflesh's sound, in terms of at least the more recent albums, it's fucking huge. They are one of the most massive sounding bands out there due to the fact that it is some of the heaviest death metal they can conjure up, but also some of these giant lavish symphonies that kind of go all over the place. And if you like your evil grand as hell, this is definitely the band for you. The opening track, The Collector, absolutely sets the mood. There's definitely a lot of Sumerian themes in here, so you get like an oud and some strings in there kind of setting the mood, like very desert-y. Like, I know it gets arid in Greece, but I think we're talking more Sahara here. And that curtails into these massive, heavy, bending riffs, and this is where you get to hear the production on display. This was mixed and mastered by Jens Bagren, and he's definitely the right guy for this job because there's so much going on in this album. There's so many layers. The guitars are absolutely massive. You have all the symphonic elements and all the choirs. The drums are absolutely pummeling in the mix. Hell, even the bass is just gigantic on here too. Like, everything is huge. And then you have the vocals on top, which there's a lot of vocal variety in here, but the frontman and bassist, his low growls, very like early Ackerfeltian, so it's this extra clear, gnarly growl, and it just sounds like a demon belching forth hellfire into a whole bunch of helpless people at the Middle Eastern bazaar. I don't know, like, there's a lot of different atmosphere on here. But that is like the overall vibe in this, is just larger than life death metal with a larger than life symphony orchestra behind it. If they made a special edition for this, which, I mean, they might have, but it wouldn't be the one I would think they should make, because I think the special edition should probably come with an altar and a dagger. Like, this isn't low budget horror movies. This is like the big budget giant epic, but also horror movies, because it's dark and sinister and foreboding at all times, but it's so epic and triumphant and very melodic too. Songs like Aerophant and The Desert Throne have big melodic hooks. Aerophant actually has a clean vocal passage in there that sounds very Alice in Chainsy. Like, it kind of has that Alice in Chains kind of harmony to it, but those are pivoting back and forth between the main, deep, gnarly, guttural roars on here. And the contrast between those vocal styles, plus you have like female choirs on here, you have male choirs, and they're all just chanting doomy whatever. I don't know if it's in English. I don't know if they're just making noises. The effect is what matters, and it feels like pretty much the Omen sort of just creeped its way into this album. Now, going back to like the issues I might have with symphonic metal, sometimes it just feels a little bit cluttered, like there's just too much going on. And that does happen on this album, but for the most part, they space it out well. They actually have like good songwriting dynamics. They'll actually isolate the symphonies a little bit and maybe like a choir before going into the next pummeling breakdown or just big nasty tremolo riff. It doesn't feel as cluttered as a band like maybe Flesh God Apocalypse. I really do like that band, but sometimes it's just such a blitz of blast beats and all sorts of symphonic arrangements going on at lightning speed, it becomes just kind of hard to get your head around. This being maybe a little bit more groove laden and maybe a little bit more melodic and with more space for the symphonies to breathe, it actually comes across as very accessible for how fucking heavy it is, and this is an absolutely monstrously heavy album. But surprisingly, I would also say this might be one of their most accessible ones. They don't lay on the blast beats very much, they're still on here, but most of this is very groove laden. It's paced at kind of a doomy, sludgy stomp for most of it. Like, it's driven by breakdowns, giant vocals, and then all these lush symphonic arrangements while the guitars just chug along. Now granted, the guitars are creating some really cool riffs underneath, but a lot of it is just sort of this big lumbering chug that is behind it, and it kind of lets the symphonies kind of do their thing, create the more evil atmosphere, make it more grand, while the death metal elements are free to break a fucking cinder block over your head. But again, back to the accessible moments on here, there are a couple tracks on here that actually sound kind of similar to Gojira, albeit a fuck ton more evil. But songs like The Dreadful Muse and A Desert Throne actually have some very Gojira-ish type hooks, like a kind of simple chug, a very dissonant melody, but then again, of course, symphonic arrangements on top to kind of make it more lavish. But they kind of stay in that like syncopated, chuggy groove for a good chunk of this. Especially at Desert Throne, which breaks into a nasty, syncopated, chuggy, like stomp of a breakdown. And breakdowns are all over here. I mean, if you're looking for like some solid headbanging material, the first 4 tracks will pretty much have you like right in a solid groove. But also, again, dazzle you with a lot of cool melodic hooks and really cool creative symphonic ideas. I like all the different instruments that are in here. You hear strings, you hear horn sections, there's like an oud in there to create that more like, you know, desert vibe. And all of it contributes on here really well. Though sometimes I would say it does get a bit overdone. The song Self-Eater, while I like it, I think the symphony kind of takes over, and there's so much going on top with the symphony that the guitar work kind of gets buried in it. And with the vocals being loud in the mix too, there's just too much going on. Now granted, Jens did a great job mixing this, but there's only so much you can do when there is so much going on, and that one the symphony kind of took over a little bit. And then there's the song Coming Storm, which is batshit crazy. I would almost call this song progressive because there's so much going on. It's definitely written in movements, but it is by far, I would say, the most lavish song on here in terms of like how the song moves and how epic and grand it gets, but again, also heavy. It's like listening to Bloodbath while someone is blaring the soundtrack to Ben-Hur, like right in your ears. And it can be a bit much, like the contrast just gets kind of crazy. And I feel like the song kind of like gets off the rails just a little bit, just trying to be bigger than every other song on here, which the songs are already fucking huge, so really no need. But the transitions can be kind of odd in that song. It starts off sounding, again, very symphonic, but instead of sounding like evil and, you know, Middle Eastern, it sounds like the score to a Hitchcock film. It's actually kind of cool. That goes into like full-on death metal, blast beats, tremolo riffs, and it really starts building up and getting like more intense, and then all of a sudden it cuts out, and then you get this isolated female operatic vocal, which is pleasant. I like it. Just where it comes in and just how abruptly it shifts and then goes right back to business as if this little section really didn't need to be there. It's just a case of doing too much there, I think. And while I like all the vocal variety in here, it's really cool to hear like different growls, lots of lush choirs and clean vocals. Sometimes the clean vocals don't necessarily work, like the title track. They have a clean chorus on there, and it's decent, but it really doesn't lift the song up as much as, say, Hierophant. Hierophant, I think, has a really catchy chorus, and it comes in at the right spot. This one just kind of feels like it just comes in and hangs out for a little bit and leaves, and then comes back because it forgot its keys or some shit. I think that kind of falls under doing too much. Like, you know, there's, again, a lot of stuff going on in these songs, and there is a good example on here of them sort of dialing back the symphonic elements and going more straight ahead with Psychohistory. It's the shortest song on here, probably the fastest and most death metal centric one. Like, there are symphonic elements, but they are way more subdued than they are on any other track. And at that point it was kind of a nice break, not only because it breaks the pace of the album, which the pace, very groove laden, and I like it, but it could have been broken up by blast beats or like a fast thrashy rhythm or even like maybe an even slower breakdown. It kind of hangs on to like one groove for maybe a little bit too long in here. And the song was a good break from the symphonic elements, which I think are well done and well orchestrated. It's just sometimes they can be a bit much. This one kind of dialed it back and just let it be a flat-out death metal song, and I think ended up being one of the most memorable songs on here for me. Now, I jammed the special edition, which actually came with 3 bonus tracks, and they were all orchestral ones. Salvation, the 14th part, and Coming Storm, all orchestral instrumental. Now, Salvation and the 14th part are essentially Aerophant and the Collector, just with all the guitars and everything stripped out. And honestly, like, it's kind of cool to hear just the orchestral arrangements, and again, because it's real musicians putting this together and it is like really composed well, I found it pretty interesting. It's really cool to hear those elements without all the death metal elements in there. And honestly, these guys should score a fucking movie because they really have a knack for, like, you know, composing this stuff. Like, this is really well done. But yeah, overall, this was a pretty fucking solid album. So I'm gonna give this 3.5 stars. I really dug this. It does get overbearing, but in terms of symphonic metal, I prefer their style to a lot of other bands. Like, I really do like Flesh God Apocalypse, except again, they can be really too much sometimes. This, it's a little bit more subdued, but they kind of laid on sort of one motif for a little bit too long in here, and it kind of dragged for a little bit, but I was impressed with the melodies. I was impressed with the arrangements. Holy shit, these songs are very well composed. The whole atmosphere and vibe of the album is just epically evil as fuck, and honestly, this was a lot of fun to listen to. It had been a while since I'd gone back and listened to Septicflesh. I mean, it's usually a lot of the older stuff, but this makes me want to go back and listen to them even more because, again, I appreciate this on a really interesting musical level, and in terms, again, of symphonic metal, I can get into this. This is just kind of like over-the-top fun and really shows how creative death metal can be in terms of, you know, broadening the sound. If you're a fan of, again, like Flesh God Apocalypse or just like symphonic metal in general, it's probably a good chance you already know about this band, but if you haven't heard of this band, this would not be a bad jumping on point. I think it is a little bit more accessible than they have been in the past, but I still recommend going through, checking out all their albums. I jumped on at Sumerian Demons. I still really love that album, but their newer stuff is really good too. But yeah, if you like your death metal fucking over the top and orchestral as fuck, check this out. This was a really solid listen. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We're also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there'll be a link down below. We're gonna do some more stuff after we get back from MDF, which this batch of reviews coming up will be the last ones we do until we get back. I imagine we'll probably pop on for something, maybe on YouTube, maybe on Instagram. I don't know. We're planning on having a lot of fun out there. But also, there's a link down there for thrallsmetal.com if you'd like to get one of our cool shirts, and there will also be a link down there to the Denver Death Fest thing. This is for the bands. If you'd like to submit and get on this festival, which will be from September 30th through to October 2nd this year, fill out this form, this EPK. Again, I'm still not sure what an EPK is, but I know you have to fill it out to do this. But yeah, we are still accepting bands all the way through the 15th of June, so here's your chance. Jump on there, put on all your information, and, well, we'll get back to you. So, of course, I'd like to thank every last one of you guys again for watching, subscribing, all that shit. Again, I have so much fucking fun doing this. This has become such a huge thing, and you guys are fucking awesome. Looking forward to bringing you more content. The Exodus ranking is done and rendered, and we're gonna premiere it here soon, probably Tuesday, that'd be my guess. And yeah, let's have ourselves some good, friendly, violent fun and watch that premiere together. So with that, I thank you all for watching once again, and we will catch you later.